One of my patients, Gary, is 68 years old, a retired engineer, the kind of man who spent his entire life solving problems, building systems, trusting logic, sharp mind, strong will, not someone who gives up easily. But for 3 years, every single night, something happened the moment his head touched the pillow. It started quietly, a faint crawling sensation at the bottom of his feet. Then it spread, up through his arches, into his ankles, sometimes higher. Some nights it burned, not mild discomfort, but a deep, relentless heat that made it impossible to relax. Other nights his feet turned ice cold, so cold that even under thick blankets, his wife could feel the difference the moment she touched him. And what disturbed him most wasn't just the sensation, it was the uncertainty. He told me, "I've Googled everything. Neuropathy, circulation, diabetes, I see the words, but no one tells me why it's happening to me." That frustration, that feeling of losing control over your own body, is something I hear far too often from people over 60. Because here's the truth, most people never hear. This is not just getting older. It's not random, and it's not something you're supposed to just live with. What you're feeling, whether it's tingling, burning, numbness, or that heavy swelling that seems to get worse at night, follows very specific biological patterns, patterns that can be interrupted. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 evidence-backed remedies that target the real causes behind these symptoms. Not generic advice, not vague suggestions, but specific, practical interventions you can start using immediately. And I want to be very clear about something right now. Remedy number 4 and remedy number 6 are things I almost never see discussed. Not on health websites, not in patient education materials, and rarely even explained properly in clinical settings. Yet they can make a measurable difference faster than you might expect. So I want you to stay with me through all 7, because each one builds on the next. And by the end, you won't just understand what's happening in your feet, you'll understand what your body has been trying to tell you all along. And more importantly, what to do about it. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand what is actually happening inside your body when those sensations begin. Because if you miss this part, nothing else will fully make sense. Your feet are not just skin and bone. They are one of the most nerve-dense regions in your entire body. Over 200,000 nerve endings packed into an area smaller than a sheet of paper. That means even the smallest disruption gets amplified, felt more intensely, more persistently, more uncomfortably. And there are 2 primary processes happening here. 2, not 1, and most people only ever hear about one of them. The first is what's happening to your nerves. Even a slight elevation in blood sugar, not diabetes, not anything extreme, just consistently above optimal, can begin to damage something called the myelin sheath. Think of myelin as insulation around an electrical wire. Its job is to make sure signals travel smoothly, cleanly, and accurately from one point to another. But when that insulation starts to thin, signals don't travel the way they should. They misfire, they distort, they arrive too early, too late, or not at all. And that misfiring is exactly what you feel as tingling, as burning, as numbness that comes and goes without warning. Now here's where it gets more serious, because the second process is happening at the same time: circulation. As we age, blood flow to the extremities naturally declines. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually, quietly, year after year. And when that happens, your feet begin receiving less oxygen, less nutrients, less support for repair. They are quite literally being underfed, starving at a cellular level. Now combine those 2 things, damaged nerve signaling and reduced blood flow, and you get the exact symptoms you've been experiencing. The burning at night, the cold that won't go away, the strange crawling sensation that makes it impossible to relax. But here's what most people don't realize. Both of these processes are addressable, not with guesswork, not with random supplements, but with specific targeted actions that work with your body's biology. And that's exactly what these next 7 remedies are designed to do. So let's start with the first one, because it's simple, almost too simple. But what it does inside your body is far more powerful than most people ever imagine. Remedy number one, I call it the post-meal activation window. And I want you to pay close attention here because this is one of the simplest things you can do, yet it directly targets one of the root causes we just talked about. Blood sugar spikes. Most people think the problem is what they eat, but in many cases, it's what they do immediately after they eat that matters just as much. There's a window of time, about 10 to 15 minutes after every meal, where your blood sugar rises the fastest. This happens whether you feel it or not. Whether you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, or perfectly fine according to your last checkup. And when that spike happens repeatedly, day after day, month after month, it begins to damage those tiny nerve fibers in your feet, quietly, gradually, until one day you start feeling it, the tingling, the burning, the numbness that doesn't make sense. But here's what most people don't realize. Your body already has a built-in system to control that spike, and it activates the moment you move. Not intense exercise, not a gym workout, just simple movement. When you use your leg muscles, even lightly, they begin pulling glucose out of your bloodstream and into the muscle cells. This happens through something called glut transporters. You don't need to remember the name. Just understand what it does. It turns your muscles into a glucose disposal system, immediately, without needing insulin, which means the very act of standing up, of walking slowly across your house, of staying on your feet after a meal, can dramatically reduce the damage being done to your nerves. So here's what I want you to do. After every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, do not sit down for at least 10 minutes. You don't need to go outside. You don't need special shoes. You don't need a plan. Walk around your home, stand at the counter, fold laundry. Even pacing slowly while on the phone is enough. The body doesn't care what you're doing. It cares that your muscles are active, that they're working, that they're pulling glucose out of your blood before it has a chance to cause harm. Now let me tell you what happened with Gary. We didn't start with 7 changes. We started with 1. Just this, 10 minutes of slow movement after dinner. That's it. No supplements, no complicated routines. Within 3 weeks, he came back and told me something had shifted. The burning in his feet at night was cut nearly in half. Same body, same diet, one small change, but done consistently. This is how you begin to take control back. And this is only the first piece of the puzzle, because the next one is something you can test tonight in less than 30 seconds. And what it reveals about your body might surprise you. Remedy number 1, I call it the post-meal activation window. And I want you to pay close attention here, because this is one of the simplest things you can do, yet it directly targets one of the root causes we just talked about. Blood sugar spikes. Most people think the problem is what they eat, but in many cases, it's what they do immediately after they eat that matters just as much. There's a window of time, about 10 to 15 minutes after every meal, where your blood sugar rises the fastest. This happens whether you feel it or not. Whether you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, or perfectly fine according to your last checkup. And when that spike happens repeatedly, day after day, month after month, it begins to damage those tiny nerve fibers in your feet, quietly, gradually, until one day you start feeling it, the tingling, the burning, the numbness that doesn't make sense. But here's what most people don't realize. Your body already has a built-in system to control that spike, and it activates the moment you move. Not intense exercise, not a gym workout, just simple movement. When you use your leg muscles, even lightly, they begin pulling glucose out of your bloodstream and into the muscle cells. This happens through something called glut transporters. You don't need to remember the name. Just understand what it does. It turns your muscles into a glucose disposal system, immediately, without needing insulin, which means the very act of standing up, of walking slowly across your house, of staying on your feet after a meal, can dramatically reduce the damage being done to your nerves. So here's what I want you to do. After every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, do not sit down for at least 10 minutes. You don't need to go outside. You don't need special shoes. You don't need a plan. Walk around your home, stand at the counter, fold laundry. Even pacing slowly while on the phone is enough. The body doesn't care what you're doing. It cares that your muscles are active, that they're working, that they're pulling glucose out of your blood before it has a chance to cause harm. Now let me tell you what happened with Gary. We didn't start with 7 changes. We started with 1, just this. 10 minutes of slow movement after dinner. That's it. No supplements, no complicated routines. Within 3 weeks, he came back and told me something had shifted. The burning in his feet at night was cut nearly in half. Same body, same diet, 1 small change, but done consistently. This is how you begin to take control back, and this is only the first piece of the puzzle, because the next one is something you can test tonight in less than 30 seconds. And what it reveals about your body might surprise you. Remedy number 2 is something I want you to do tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Because this is not just a technique, it's a diagnostic, a way to read what your body is trying to tell you, without machines, without tests, without waiting weeks for an appointment. I call it the bilateral temperature check, and it takes less than 30 seconds. Here's how you do it. When you get into bed tonight, lie still for about 5 minutes. Let your body settle, no movement, no shifting. Then reach down with your hand and touch the sole of your left foot, then your right. After that, touch the top of your left foot, then your right. Simple. But what you're looking for is not obvious unless you know what matters. You're checking for 2 specific things. First, are both feet the same temperature, or is one noticeably colder than the other? Because if one foot feels warm and the other feels cold, that is not random, that is asymmetry. And asymmetry in the body, especially in circulation, is a signal. It can indicate a unilateral arterial issue, meaning blood flow is not reaching one side the way it should. If you notice that, that's not something to monitor casually. That's something to bring to your doctor's attention, promptly. Now the second thing, and this is what most people experience, are both feet cold? Even under blankets? Even when the rest of your body feels comfortable? Because bilateral coldness, both feet consistently cold, is usually not about the environment. It's about circulation. As we age, the small vessels that supply blood to the extremities become less efficient. The flow slows, the return system weakens, and your feet, being the farthest point from your heart, feel it first. That cold sensation is not just discomfort, it's a message. Now here's where this becomes powerful, because if you detect that coldness, there is something you can do immediately. Right there, before you go to sleep, sit up on the edge of your bed, place both feet flat on the floor, and start with ankle circles. 10 rotations clockwise, 10 rotations counterclockwise, each foot slow, controlled, intentional. Then, without standing, lift your heels off the ground while keeping your toes planted, up and down, repeatedly, for about 30 seconds. What you're activating here is a muscle most people have never heard of, the soleus. It sits deep in your calf, and it plays a critical role in moving blood from your lower legs back toward your heart. In fact, it's often called the second heart of the body, because its pumping action is essential for circulation in your lower limbs. When you activate it, even briefly, you increase blood flow to your feet, you improve oxygen delivery, you begin reversing that cold, stagnant feeling almost immediately. This isn't theory, it's physiology. And for many people, the difference is noticeable within minutes. Warmer feet, less discomfort, a sense. Remedy number 3, this is where things start to shift in a way most people never expect, because up until now we've been talking about nerves and circulation. But there's a third factor, a structural one, something physical, mechanical, that has been quietly changing in your body for years, and almost nobody connects it to the tingling, the burning, or that strange walking on pebbles sensation. Your toes. More specifically, your toes' ability to spread. Now that might sound almost too simple, but stay with me, because this matters more than you think. Your foot was designed to function like a dynamic, flexible structure. Not rigid, not compressed, not locked into one position all day. At the center of that function is something called the plantar fascia, a thick band of tissue running from your heel all the way to the base of your toes. Its job is to absorb force, distribute pressure, and support movement. But it can only do that properly when your toes are allowed to move freely, to spread, to grip, to engage the small muscles that stabilize your foot. Here's the problem. Modern footwear, even comfortable, well-fitted shoes, gradually removes that ability. Year after year, decade after decade, your toes are pushed together, your forefoot is compressed, and those small intrinsic muscles, the ones between your toes, slowly switch off. When that happens, two things begin to occur. First, the structure of your foot changes. Pressure becomes uneven. Certain areas take on more load than they were designed to handle. Second, and this is where your symptoms come in, the tiny digital nerves running between your toes become compressed. Constantly, subtly, but continuously. And when nerves are compressed, they don't stay quiet. They react. They send signals, distorted signals, that show up as tingling, burning, or that strange sensation like you're stepping on something that isn't there. Now here's the good news. Unlike many age-related changes, this one is highly reversible, and the exercise to begin reversing it takes just 2 minutes. Sit down comfortably, take off your shoes, place a small hand towel flat on the floor in front of one foot. Now, using only your toes, no hands, grip the towel and slowly pull it towards you, then release. Spread your toes wide and push it back out. Again, pull, release, spread, push. Do this continuously for 2 minutes, then switch feet. What you're doing here is reactivating muscles with names most people have never heard. The lumbricals, the interossae, small, deep muscles that sit between your metatarsal bones, muscles that play a direct role in stabilizing your foot and protecting those delicate nerves. When these muscles come back online, pressure redistributes, nerve compression decreases, and those abnormal signals start to quiet down. There was a study in 2019 that looked at this exact type of training. Adults with Remedy number 4. This is one of the two I told you to stay for. And I'm going to say this very clearly. Almost nobody talks about this. Not in videos, not in basic health guides, and even in clinical settings. It's often overlooked when patients describe swelling, heaviness, or that tight, uncomfortable feeling in their feet at the end of the day. Most explanations you'll hear focus on sodium or kidney function. And yes, those matter. But there is a third mechanism, and for many people over 60, it's the missing piece. It's called nocturnal venous pooling. Now stay with me, because once you understand this, everything you've been feeling starts to make sense. Throughout the day, gravity is constantly pulling fluid down into your lower body, into your calves, your ankles, your feet. Normally, your body has a system to counteract that. Your calf muscles contract as you walk. Your veins contain tiny one-way valves that push blood back upward toward your heart. But as you age, those valves don't work as efficiently. They become less competent, and instead of moving fluid upward, some of it begins to leak backward, slowly, quietly, hour after hour. So by the time evening arrives, fluid has pooled in your lower legs. Your ankles feel tight. Your feet feel heavy. Sometimes even swollen enough that your shoes feel different than they did in the morning. Now here's the part most people completely miss. When you lie down at night, flat, that fluid doesn't magically disappear because you're not elevated, you're not assisting the return flow. So it lingers, it stagnates, and by morning, your feet still carry that weight, that pressure, that subtle swelling that never fully resets. But here's the solution, and it's almost deceptively simple. You change your position. Not your medication, not your diet, your position. Before you go to bed tonight, place a folded blanket or 2 firm pillows under the foot of your mattress. Not under your legs directly, under the mattress itself, so that your feet are elevated approximately 4 to 6 inches above the level of your heart. What this does is allow gravity to work in your favor for once. Instead of pulling fluid down, it gently encourages it back toward your core, where your body can process it through your lymphatic system, through your circulation. This position has been used in clinical settings for decades. But here, you're applying it passively. You do nothing. You sleep, and your body does the work. Most people who try this notice something within the first few nights. They wake up, and their ankles feel lighter, less tight, the heaviness fades faster in the morning, and over time, even the end-of-day swelling begins to decrease. This isn't guesswork. This is physics, and when you use it correctly, the results feel almost immediate. Now pause for a moment, because I want you to think about what you're experiencing, right? Remedy number 5. This one is different because up until now, everything we've talked about, you can feel circulation, movement, pressure. But this is happening silently, deep inside your body. And for many people over 60, it's one of the most overlooked causes of burning, tingling, and nerve discomfort in the feet. Vitamin B12. Now you might be thinking, I eat well, I take supplements, so this can't be me. But here's the part most people don't know. As you age, your ability to absorb B12 declines. Not slightly, significantly. Because B12 absorption depends on something called intrinsic factor, a protein produced in your stomach. And over time, your stomach produces less of it. At the same time, stomach acid levels drop, which further reduces your ability to extract B12 from food. So even if your diet hasn't changed, your absorption has, and that means your levels can slowly fall without you realizing it. Now add one more layer. If you are taking medication for blood sugar, especially metformin, your B12 levels may be dropping even faster. There's strong evidence showing long-term use is associated with reduced B12. So now you have a perfect storm: lower absorption, reduced intake efficiency, and possible medication interference. And where does your body show that first? Your nerves. Because B12 plays a direct role in maintaining the myelin sheath, that protective coating we talked about earlier. When B12 drops below optimal, that coating begins to break down. And when it does, nerve signals become unstable, erratic, unpredictable, and that's when symptoms begin to appear. At first, it's subtle, a slight tingling at the end of the day, a strange numbness that comes and goes, easy to ignore, easy to dismiss. But over time, it builds. For some people, it becomes a constant pins and needles sensation. For others, a deep, burning discomfort that makes even light contact feel intense. And in some cases, it goes the other direction, a loss of sensation, which can be even more dangerous because you stop noticing pressure, injury, or irritation. Now, here's where many people make a mistake. They realize B12 might be involved, so they go out and buy the first supplement they see, assuming they're all the same. But they're not. The form matters, the method matters, and especially at your age, absorption matters most. The form with the strongest evidence for better absorption in older adults is methylcobalamin. And not just swallowed, but taken sublingually, dissolved under the tongue. Why? Because this allows it to enter your bloodstream more directly, bypassing much of the digestive process that may no longer be working efficiently. But before you start anything, there's one step you should not skip. Get your B12 level tested. Not guessed, not assumed. Measured. It's a simple blood test, often covered, and it tells you exactly where you stand. Because remedy number 6, I call this the weekly foot audit, and I want you to treat this seriously, because this is not just observation, this is early detection, the kind that can prevent small problems from becoming permanent ones. Here's how you do it. Once a week, not randomly, not in a dim room, but in clear, natural daylight. Sit near a window where the light is strong enough that you can see every detail. Place your foot where the light hits it directly, and take your time. Because what you're about to do is something most people never do until it's too late. You're going to look for 4 specific signs. Each one tells you something different about your circulation, your nerves, and your overall health. First, color. Not just does it look normal, but look closely. Compare different areas of your foot, the toes, the sole, the top. If you notice any bluish tint or a dusky, purplish color, that is not just cosmetic, that is called cyanosis. It means oxygen is not reaching the tissue the way it should. And this is important. You do not monitor this over time. You do not wait and see. If you see that, you contact your doctor the same day. Because circulation issues caught early are manageable. Ignored, they progress. Second, your nails. Look at them carefully. Thickness, color, texture. If they're becoming thickened, yellowish, or brittle, that's often a fungal infection. And while that may sound minor, it rarely stays minor if ignored. It spreads, it becomes harder to treat, and in some cases it begins to affect the surrounding skin. Catching it early makes everything easier. Third, your skin. Run your fingers gently across it. Pay attention to how it feels and how it looks. If the skin appears thin, shiny, almost polished, and you notice less hair growth than before, that's not a sign of smooth skin, that's reduced blood supply, an early warning sign of peripheral arterial disease. This is your window, your chance to act before more serious complications develop. And the earlier you catch it, the more options you have. Fourth, any wound, any sore, any area that looks like it should be healing, but isn't. If it hasn't improved within 2 weeks, not healed completely, but hasn't clearly improved, that is no longer something to manage at home. No guessing, no over-the-counter solutions. That needs proper evaluation, because slow-healing wounds are one of the earliest warning signs that something deeper is wrong. Circulation, nerve function, or both. Now here's the reason this matters so much. Your feet are often the first place your body shows signs of trouble, but they're also the easiest place to ignore. Covered by socks, hidden in shoes, out of sight, until something forces your attention. This weekly check changes that. It puts you back in control. It gives you visibility, and when you can see what's happening, you can act on it. Remedy number 7. This is where we bring everything together. Not with effort, not with movement, but with intention. Because what you do in the final minutes before sleep determines how your body behaves for the next 6 to 8 hours. And for many people, that window is completely wasted. This is what I want you to do. 20 minutes before you go to bed, prepare a simple foot soak. Not hot, not steaming, just comfortably warm. Warm enough that the moment your feet touch the water, they begin to relax. Then add 2 tablespoons of magnesium sulfate. Epsom salt, measure it. Don't guess, because consistency is part of what makes this work. Stir it gently until it dissolves. Then place both feet into the water, slowly. Let them adjust, and once they're in, stay still. No phone, no distractions, no multitasking. Just sit for 12 minutes, not 10, not 15, 12. Set a timer if you need to. Because this is not random, this is deliberate. During those 12 minutes, something important is happening. The warmth begins to open up the small blood vessels in your feet. Circulation improves, oxygen delivery increases. At the same time, magnesium begins to support your nervous system, helping reduce overactive nerve signaling, the very thing that causes that burning, tingling sensation at night. It also helps your muscles release, not just in your feet, but throughout your lower legs, and when your muscles relax, your circulation improves even further. Everything starts working together. Now when the 12 minutes are up, dry your feet gently, then apply a thin layer of unscented moisturizer. Nothing perfumed, nothing medicated, just something simple to protect the skin. And as you do that, take a moment. Notice the difference, because awareness matters. It connects you back to your body, and it reinforces the habit. Do this every night for 14 days, not occasionally, not when you remember, every night, because consistency is what creates change. Now here's what I want you to understand. None of these 7 remedies work in isolation. They are not random tips. They are a system. Each one targets a different part of the same problem: nerve function, circulation, structure, nutrition, recovery. And when you apply them together, they reinforce each other. They compound. That's exactly what Gary did. He didn't pick one. He committed to all 7. And for the first time in years, he started sleeping through the night. No burning, no constant discomfort, no waking up wondering what was wrong. Just rest. Real rest. And that's the goal. Not just to reduce symptoms, but to give your body the conditions it needs to function the way it was designed to. Now, one last thing. Everything I've shared with you today is for educational purposes. Your body is unique. Your history matters. So before making any significant changes, it's always worth